Good evening, everyone. For all attendees from West Coast, and good night, for our friends from East Coast, and good morning to our audience from China or other Asian countries. This is Bill speaking. I'm the founder of Harmony Plus. It's so excited because today is the 250th week that we are launching our free webinars. In the past 250 weeks, we already delivered such free webinars over 500 times, nonstop, whether it's rain or shine. And today, I'm even happier because, again, I have the honor to have our dean, Esther Wojcicki, to be the speaker to talk with all our parents today. Whatever we share in such webinars are not standard answers, but we always are here to stay with you, to discuss with you, and exchange our ideas, let us all together to find the most suitable way for your kids, for their growth. I think that's the main purpose. So for today, we will have Esther talking for some old friends. I could tell Felix Wang already participated in our programs for 1 year nonstop. Welcome again. And today I also saw some new friends from the registration. And even I saw Alex's parents are both here. So welcome. And for new friends, I would like to give a quick introduction about our speaker, Esther. Yeah, she is a legend in America, and she is one of the greatest teachers in this country and worldwide. She's also a great journalist, and many people know her as a successful mom because she raised 3 successful daughters. And also from the book, she is also a great author. She has 2 books that I love very much. Moonshots in Education, and also How to Raise Successful People. Yeah, so today we're having her as the speaker to share about kindness. Let me pass the microphone over to her. Say hi first. Yeah.
Hello, I'm very excited to see everybody. And thank you so much for coming wherever you are in the world. It's really an honor to be here, and I'll be happy to talk to you about kindness. This is something that is extremely relevant today in our world.
So. Yeah, and just for our audience to know, kindness is also a key element. We overcame the difficulties, the most difficult time due to COVID-19. Since last year, the lockdown happened, so many educational companies, they decided to shut down, or they fired their employees or reduced their salaries. We didn't do any of these because of kindness. We tried so hard all together to brainstorm and think what is the mission and what is the purpose of our company, and also what are our core values. We think we, Harmony Plus, as an educational company, which is actually also developing and reshaping to an EdTech company, we have a bigger mission. And in one word, that is to upgrade education and empower students. That's why we decided to overcome all the difficulties based on kindness, then work together with the parents, with the students, and with the schools and the teachers. Fortunately, we survived. I just gave everybody a quick example how powerful kindness can be. Okay, let me give the microphone back to Esther again, then she can start her slides, she can start her talk today. Afterwards, we will have Q&As. During Esther's talk, you can type your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. If you want to communicate with us, you can also send any other information in the chat box relevant to education, relevant to parenting, please. Okay, Esther, please, you can start now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Bill. So I will start now. Let's see if I can find the presentation. And I think I found it.
Yeah.
And here we are. So hopefully everyone can see it. So I'm going to talk about today 4 reasons why kindness matters in parenting and in the classroom. And, you know, sometimes it isn't obvious to parents, and it's not obvious to teachers, because I think the tradition in schools and actually with parents in the last century was to be very strict and, you know, force students to do things. And then that was considered in the student's best interest. If they were forced to do something and then they did it, and then they took a test on it. But somehow this methodology is no longer working for the 21st century. So I think we already had a little bit of information about Harmony Plus. It's a great organization, and it provides supplemental education for kids everywhere. And these are subjects that are not available anyplace else. You know, you can't get them in your traditional school. So I'm going to talk about why kindness matters in parenting, in teaching, and also in today's world. And I probably won't have to convince you very much, because if you just take a look at what has happened in the last week here in the United States, you can see that there is a big need for kindness. And it seems to have disappeared slowly, well, actually, perhaps not that slowly, in the 4 years that Trump has been president. And I don't want to get involved in any politics here at all. So I'm not saying one thing, not favoring one or another, but I'm just saying this type of behavior is not indicative of any kind of kindness or understanding. So here's another cause for stress, unfortunately. Johns Hopkins, if you look at the date, this date was yesterday, now predicts US COVID-19 death toll could rise to 400,000 by the month's end. And that's the death toll. And today we have, in the United States, about 200,000 new cases every day. So it's a difficult situation, and we really, you know, we need to work with each other. It has to be a team effort for us to move forward. We need a community led by kindness, and a kinder world is possible. And together we need to make it a reality. And a kinder world means that we all need to work together. And I unfortunately see lots of angry people out there. And I think that anger breeds more anger. It's just like war breeds more war, and kindness breeds more kindness. So if we could just think about that, maybe that would help. So education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. And this was said by Nelson Mandela. And of course, he knew quite a bit about that in South Africa. And we need to remember this is a really important thing. And this is why I've been involved in education my whole life. Somehow or other, I figured out early on that education was the best way to change the world. And so I've been involved as a teacher and as an author, and actually as a journalist, you know, doing things where I thought it was going to make the world a better place. And I'm still doing it right now, which I'm happy to say. So here's some information that I think might be important for everybody to know. The happier you are, the happier others around you will be. So if you're in an environment where everybody is unfortunately depressed or sad or so forth, it actually impacts you, even though you might think that you can, rise above it. People's happiness depends on the happiness of others with whom they're connected. And it just makes sense. And so what we try to do is treat each other with kindness and be helpful so that we can all at least be happier than we could have been if we were not caring about each other. This provides further justification for seeing happiness like health as a collective phenomenon. And this is the study, in case you want to look it up, Fowler and Christakis. And they did a study, which can be seen here as a British Medical Journal. And it's 2008, but there is additional studies that confirm this, and I guess it's not so surprising. So being kind also reduces stress. Kindness can reduce stress as well as the activation of the autonomic and immune pathways that have been implicated in the development of a host of chronic stress-related illnesses, including depression, heart disease, and diabetes. There's another study you could look up if you want. So kindness, it just makes sense. And, war or being nasty or having riots is just the opposite. So more kindness equals a better life for everybody. Everybody, and especially, in your family situation, being kind to each other makes a huge difference. So if you treat your kids with kindness, they'll learn, they'll be able to learn to be kind, have compassion, and be happier. What kids practice at home is what they become. And this probably isn't such a surprise. If they're treated with kindness, they become kind. Kids that come from families that are kind people. If they're intellectually stimulated at home, they become curious. If they're respected, they respect themselves and others. And if they're trusted, they trust themselves. This is something I talked about in a previous webinar that I did, how important it is for kids to be trusted. If they learn to collaborate, they become collaborative. I also talked about this in another session. And if they're given independence, they become independent. And that's what we want. We want independent, caring, compassionate people who are going to be able to make a difference in the world. So at the bottom, I have this arrow that I think is really important for everybody to notice. Behavior taught in childhood or at childhood, it goes for the whole lifetime. Lifespan of a human being. What they learn as children is what they do as adults. And that's why hatred, unfortunately, is passed down from one generation to the next. And you see that in the Middle East. You see that actually in multiple places in the world. Kids are not born hating. They learn to do it from their families. So people who are kind and compassionate are usually the most successful. Studies consistently show that we feel happier when we perform acts of kindness for our children, students, families, friends, and communities. Not only do good deeds make us feel better, they provide a more successful lifestyle. Here's a study, a column by David Brooks in the New York Times. It talks about this. Nice guys finish first. Happier children have greater academic success. As a teacher, I can just tell you, if a student was not performing in my class, the number one reason was because they were unhappy. Unhappy either because they were bullied or they were having too much pressure or they were hungry. I mean, unhappy kids don't learn. They just can't learn. They're busy feeling sorry for themselves. So we want kids to be happy. And when you treat kids kindly, they also treat themselves kindly. And this is one of the most important things that we can train them to do as adults, is be kind to yourself. Because one of the things that we all do, it's just part of life, is we make mistakes. And if you get really angry with yourself, it's very difficult for you. Your blood pressure goes up, you can't sleep, you're stressed. So self-compassion, self-kindness is really important. And if you know and have learned this as a child, it's easier for you to do. We need to also recognize our common humanity. We have shared human condition, experience. We all share pain, we all share hunger, we all share joy. We need to be able to connect with other people. And mindfulness, being open to the reality of the present moment. Like right now, the present moment, the whole world is suffering as a result of COVID-19. So trust, respect, and kindness leads to self-efficacy, and that leads to higher achievement and goals and positive behavior. The researchers have found that higher self-efficacy means how you feel about yourself. Self-empowerment is linked to greater ability to think productively. When you think you can, you can. And that's one thing I always did for my students. While they might not have believed in themselves, I believed in them. I could see that they were more capable than they thought they were. And what's interesting is that when the teacher believes in them or the parent believes in them, they suddenly start to believe in themselves as well. So it gives them higher motivation, stronger effort put into activities or tasks, greater resilience, and lower vulnerability to stress. I mean, these are all really important. This is done by Albert Bandura, who's here at Stanford University, who I happen to know. He did this study in 2013. All parents should know about the importance of this. Here's his study, American Psychological Association, the role of self-efficacy in goal-based motivation. So mental health is one of the biggest pandemic issues we'll face in 2021. And this came out today, January 9th. Children's hospitals grapple with the wave of mental illness. It's all these people that are so stressed about what's going on. And I know it's a stressful time. I'm living in it too. I haven't been out of my house since March, except maybe I take a walk around the neighborhood. And then I go to the store late at night when there aren't other people around. I mean, we're all suffering through this, but we will get through it because we have a vaccination, and there's one in Europe, the UK, China has a vaccine, the United States has 2 vaccines, maybe 3. We're going to get through this. We just have to think positively. And so building self-value circumvents depression. You can tell your kids, we're all going to get through it. It's not fun, but we're going to do it. And you have the ability to do it. I believe in you. There's a lot of other things we can do. I mean, like, for example, one thing, I became a much better cook. And I'm also a much better house cleaner. Not something I was planning on doing, but I'm learning a lot of other skills that I might not have had earlier. I'm also a much better gardener. My garden looks pretty happy. So kindness leads to effective collaboration. Teaching collaboration is a 21st century skill. And the reason it is a 21st century skill is because today you can collaborate much easier, much more easily than you could before. We all have phones and we have computers. And so we can find information easily. When I was growing up in the 1950s, I had to go to the library, and that was a big deal. And there were just books. And, in the 1960s, it was the same thing. That's when I went to Berkeley, UC Berkeley. And I would spend a lot of time in the library or a lot of time listening to lectures. But today we can collaborate easily because we have all that digital technology to support us. And what we want to do is prepare kids for a collaborative work world. These are just a few of the tools that industry is using now to collaborate. I mean, industry in the US and around the world is focused on collaboration. They realize the importance of people collaborating. And so when you treat kids with kindness and when you empower them, you're preparing them for the work world today. So this is Steve Jobs, was a very important person in my life because his daughter was in my class and he spent a lot of time in my class. And so he said that everything in business that's not done by one person, it's done by a team of people. It's so important for us to realize the importance of collaboration and a team of people working together. So there's this old saying that I learned from a friend who said, people who sweep the snow only from their front step have no sense of community. No, they're not kind, and they show no empathy. It's last century thinking. And I can understand that from the last century because I think that's what we did a lot of. And that's what people felt they had to do to get ahead. But in today's world, it doesn't work. And there's this book. I had a debate with Amy Chua in Mexico, in Puebla, Mexico, at a conference called City of Ideas. And she said in the conference, in the time I was debating her, that she never once focused on her children's happiness and that kindness was not a focus of hers. And then if you read her book, you will see that that's true. And so the most important thing she told me, and she told the audience, was focus on your child being number one. And that's what she did. So maybe that worked, as I said, in another era, but it does not work today. And it's not an effective strategy when we focus on kindness and collaboration. So if you have read this book, I'm not sure if you did or not, but you just need to know that this was very influential, 10 years ago or so. And it's still pretty influential. So the reason number 2 to treat kids with kindness, when they're treated with kindness and with empathy, they learn to be kind and empathetic. So empathy is understanding the feelings of others, being kind to others, and, helping others that need to be helped. It might not be in your best interest, but working as a team. Empathy is the way to develop it is talk about it with your child. And number one way to be empathetic is listening skills. So for you as a parent, and I talk about this in my book, you just need to listen. You don't have to give advice. It's actually really easy. You just listen and you can just, if they ask for advice, you can give it, but otherwise you don't have to do that. And you want to encourage genuine perspective taking. In other words, like, what do you think the perspective of the other person is or the other child is? And you cultivate compassion by giving examples and just having kids read books about empathy and compassion, and stories are really important. Movies. So kindness builds strong, lasting relationships. I mean, that's why people never want to leave some companies, because when they find a company where the people really care about each other and care about them, they're not concerned as much about the salary. They're concerned about being in a group where they're valued. So children who learn about and experience kindness tend to have stronger relationships with others because of their ability to empathize with how others feel. It's an important social skill that lasts throughout a lifetime, and it's essential in adolescent and adult years. Here's another study you can look up, also Hughes from 2013. So I just want to reiterate It means being a good listener, being collaborative. I talk about this in my book. Don't dictate to your children. Collaborate. You'll be surprised at how much easier it is to parent when you have a collaborative model, and be respectful of their ideas. I know that sometimes parents come in and they just, honestly, I've seen it. They just grab a child's electronic device, cell phone, iPad, computer, whatever, and then they just say, you can't do it anymore. You've done it enough. This is not being respectful. This is not being collaborative. And what this does is create a lot of animosity. And so this is the opposite of kindness. In my classes over 40 years, I always collaborated with my students. And as you can imagine, in the last 20 years, everybody had a cell phone in their pocket. The question was, what did I do to make sure that they were listening to me and to each other and not on their phone? We set up rules for the class collaboratively. And when they collaborate, then they do it. They follow the rules if they're part of the group that created the rules. So here are some of the skills that are strengthened by empathy. Negotiation skills. You negotiate more effectively when you're empathetic. I just talked about collaboration skills, creativity skills. I'm going to talk more about creativity in a minute. And feeling safe. People feel safer when they think that someone there empathizes and understands them and has an emotional connection with them and is able to identify their needs. That's why empathy works so well in negotiation, because when the person you're negotiating with realizes that you understand them, they're more willing to negotiate. Reason number 3, with kindness, kids develop creativity. And hopefully this isn't a surprise. Creativity requires vulnerability. When you try something new, you could easily be wrong. As a matter of fact, no one does it right the first time, and they're frequently wrong. And that's one of the things that I emphasized in my class, whether it was English language, whether it was journalism or social studies or even math. If you didn't do it right the first time, no problem, just revise, do it again. It's called mastery learning. We can do it at home. You don't do it right the first time, do it again, no problem. So kids need to be supported by kindness to be creative. And here I'm going to play this video. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Evan Spiegel, as somebody I also know, he co-founded Snap. And so this is what he says that I think is really important.
No sound. That's the no sound.
No sound?
Yeah.
You can't, I hear the sound. Why is it that you can't hear the sound?
Maybe when you share, you use the shared document, so the audio is not input in the Zoom.
So how do I put the Zoom on there?
Yeah, maybe just send the link. Send the link to this. Yeah, Aaron, can you help? Copy the link and send it to the checkbox. Then our audience can watch it later.
Sure.
I don't know.
I have a solution. Okay.
Let's see, how do I get them to stop?
I can play from my cell phone. You can play that. I can play from a cell phone. And at the same time, then other people can see the screen and also listen to audio from my device.
So maybe we should not do it at all.
Yeah, just skip it, and we can have Erin send the link to our audience.
Okay, we'll do it again. We'll just continue.
Yeah.
Let's see. New share. Somehow I can't get it to share now.
Okay, you can. Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, yeah, okay, you can play. Okay, or you can click play. I play from my device, then others can hear. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, go. Try.
The reason why kindness is so important to us is because, in our view, it's inextricably linked with creativity. So, what we talked about a little bit before was this idea that if you feel afraid, it's very hard to express yourself and be creative. And one of the times that people feel afraid is when they feel uncomfortable or they feel scared or they're worried someone's going to make fun of them. And so that's why having a kind culture really empowers creativity, because it creates a culture where people treat each other with respect and they support one another. And therefore, people feel comfortable and more creative.
Well,
Good job.
did it work?
Yeah, teamwork.
Okay. Thank you, audience, for
that it's a teamwork.
yes, it's teamwork, but also
done by a team of people.
Yes, so that's Evan Spiegel, and he's pretty well known, and I think it makes so much sense. That's why I wanted him to be able to speak it himself. So creativity leads to innovation, because with creativity you have ideas, imagination. You know, some of the ideas my students had, I'm not kidding, they were crazy, but some of the most crazy ideas have worked out. And, you know, so I met Steve Jobs in the early 1990s. And I can tell you that we all thought he was a little crazy when he said he wanted to have a phone in the pocket. And I mean, who would have ever thought that was true? So, I mean, you never know. So creativity is expression, concepts, problem solving, brainstorming. And I think you want to give your child or the student an opportunity to do that. And that leads to innovation. Innovation, it's the process, it's invention. I mean, look at Elon Musk, what he's doing. My God, it is crazy. Right now, Tesla is valued more than Amazon. Unbelievable. Just happened this last week. So I think we need to realize we need to give our kids, our children, some space to be creative so that it leads to innovation. So this is the long-term impact. It's a good slide for everybody to have. Compassion, empathy, kindness, empowerment, self-value. It leads to a positive image, academic success, increased happiness, stronger personal relationships, greater resilience, more motivated to succeed, critical thinking skills, stronger immune system, and greater sense of family and community. I mean, hey, the question is, why wouldn't you do it? And kindness also empowers the 4 C's, which is one of the what I focus on in my book as well. Again, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. So we want to have kindness in the classroom too. And so that's another entire topic, working with teachers and bringing kindness to the classroom. Because I think in many cases, most students in schools around the world will say that when they think of classrooms, they don't think of kindness. But I would tell you that kids work harder when they think the teacher cares about them and when the teacher is kind. So this is long-term impact that's negative without kindness. And I think you want to avoid this. Low self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness, isolation, lack of love, absence of compassion, higher anxiety, more likely to be bullied, lower academic success, substance abuse, suicide, depression, So many kids are depressed these days and so stressed, poor social skills, anger and violence. So we want to avoid this long-term lack of kindness. And this came out from the Atlantic Monthly. Stop trying to raise just successful kids. Start raising kind ones. And this is a good article that I just recommend people read. So from my own daughters, all three of them, I can tell you Susan, the oldest one, who's the CEO of YouTube, and Janet, the middle one, professor of pediatrics at UCSF, and Anne, the youngest one, co-founder of the personal genetics company 23andMe. The path to success is not straight. So I know that happens to a lot of people. I mean, it starts early. Kids think, or parents think, if kids don't do things at the age of 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, that they're not going to be smart or not going to be successful. I'd just like to remind most people that Albert Einstein didn't learn to speak till he was 3. And so I think we need to just give every kid an opportunity to develop at their own rate. I think we have the hardest time with kids in their teenage years because they have their own ideas, and that sometimes conflicts with parents. But the path to success is not straight. And as I said, my 3 daughters, they didn't have a straight path to success. And the story is in my book. I would love to tell you now, but I think we don't have time. So here's my book, How to Raise Successful People, Simple Lessons for Radical Results. And this is a quote from Arianna Huffington of the Huffington Post, that I am, yes, trying to lead a revolution. I'm trying to help everybody's child be as successful as they can be. And it's based around this acronym: trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And of course, we're talked about kindness in this last lecture today. I also started a company, and the number one goal of that is to empower kids. Online gamified learning for kids 8 to 14, especially in this pandemic, because a lot of kids are on Zoom calls all day and they don't like it. So this gives kids an opportunity to master subjects not taught in school, and learn some of these college skills that they might not be learning other places. For example, you're never going to learn in school, how to make a hot chocolate balm, or how to teach your dog a viral trick. Anyway, these are all learning paths created by kids for kids. So thank you for your attention. And I think now we're going to have a question and answer session with me and Bill. And I look forward to your questions. And by the way, any questions are welcome, because what I'm trying to do is to make sure that you feel comfortable as a parent, and whatever I can do to help you be successful and your child be successful, that's what I would like to do.
Okay,
So,
dear parents or attendees, you can prepare your questions and send your questions through the chat box, or send it through the Q&A. Before your questions come up, I actually want to have some surprises to share with all of you, which we just briefly discussed with Esther before everybody entered into this webinar. That's a term I borrowed, from you will know from the Christians, like, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to destruction, and there are many who take it. For the gate is narrow and the road is hard that leads to life, and there are few who find it. Actually, before today's webinar, I was a little bit shocked, because when I opened the file about the registration, I just noticed today we got just roughly 1/3 of registrants comparing with the previous webinars. And even about the number of attendees, roughly also 1/3 of previous webinars. Why? Yeah, I think why is the key to the narrow gate. We talk about this, and I compared about Esther's topics in the past, let's say, from August, that's already 5 months. And in the past 5 months, in the first one, she talked about what in general. And that one, we had the most people signed up for that webinar. And then later by later, it is slightly stable because topics about how, but the numbers reduced already. And today we have the least number because it is about why. And this is also giving me some rethink about our education. At Harmony Plus, we are trying to redefine the education all the time, innovating. And I define fishing, and motivation as education 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. It's also about what, how, and why. But today, when our dean opened the narrow gate, actually, we're happy to see today all the attendees here. You guys are real good learners. I know you are curious. You have question marks, and you are great role models to your kids. So let me go to the questions and also share with you. Today, we have much better questions and more relevant questions than before. So thank you, Esther, for the narrow gate today. Let's go to the questions. Okay, this one, is it necessary to send kids to good schools and get training in sports and other activities to help them be successful?
Okay, I'll go through that. It's best if you can send kids to good schools, but many people can't do it. And it's very difficult for everybody to send their kid to a good school. So what you want to do is use that as an opportunity to teach your child how to adapt and to cope in a situation where the school might not be as good as you want it to be. So I personally went to a pretty bad school, I'm sorry to say. When I was going to school, there were too many students and not enough classrooms. And so what they did is they divided the school day into two. Half the student body went from 7 o'clock in the morning till 12, and the other half went from 1 o'clock until 5. And so, you could just, cry about it, and you could have a lot of, I don't know, you could do a lot of other things, say move your child, but there was no way my parents were going to do that. They were too poor. But what I did something that was kind of crazy. And I think I probably was one of the only students that did it. I appealed to the school, the principal, if I could please go to both sessions of the school, in the morning and in the afternoon. And most kids were just thrilled not to have to go to school for so long. And I was just the opposite. So I think what you want to do is look for an opportunity in whatever situation you're in and see whether or not you can't make it work for you. And I can tell you also the same thing happened with my daughters. They got some teachers that were really not so good. And what I did is I said, that's no problem. We'll cope anyway. I found a tutor, a student tutor. I was 2 years older, I think, than my daughter, who came and helped. And then we spent a lot of time in the library. So, I mean, it's your attitude that I think is the most important. You want to teach your child to adapt no matter what's happening, to somehow be successful no matter what. And you can do it. We can all do it. And I think what happens is people get very upset about the fact that they don't have exactly what it is they want. And you have to realize that being the number one student in the class is not always the best. Having flexibility and having all the skills that I talked about is more important than having the best test scores.
Okay, can I add something about the good school part?
Sure.
I'm actually preparing for my next week webinar as well. I will do it together with Kathy or Professor Han. It is about schools and also online learning. We have a quick research showing that due to the pandemic, more people are now considering better schools, or schools that are better than the current ones. And even from the applications, the number of applications or the admission rates, we can tell more parents, more students are looking for good ones. But which one is good? Which one is bad? We actually need to define it. We have different ways. We can talk in next week, but I would like to say we, Harmony Plus, as an educational company, we need your help. We are not perfect, but we have a big heart, big vision. We have the kindness to help more teachers, more schools. We define ourselves as a school of schools. We really want to help more schools. Realistically, Harmony Plus is so small. We have many programs. Students love it. I know from 8 o'clock to 3 p.m., they already had that's 7 hours online, but they still want to spend 1 hour and a half or 2 hours with us. Why? Because they feel the quality of our programs and they feel the love of our teachers and our colleagues. They enjoy, but we are so small and so limited. A better way is through your help, introduce us to your schools. And Esther is such a master in education, in master-based learning, in blended learning. This is the best time we leverage this new methodology and to help schools to kind of giving up their old fashions, which has been lasted for 200 years. By that way, I think more or less we can leverage the school system and your kids or your kids' peers, they can have better education. So this is something I say, please do us a favor. Please, let's stand out and do this together to help all our kids and make the education better. So this is my suggestion, my add-on to this question, and also Esther's comments. Let's move on to the next question. I know what Esther already showed quite a lot. Simple, but not easy. Yeah, let's see how we can resolve this. Simple but not easy. This is like Warren Buffett's philosophy. Simple but not easy. Let's see this one. Should the word criticism appear in parenting? How to deal with those who likes to criticize?
Are we talking about parents that like to criticize all the
parents,
time?
Yes, parents.
So what that parent has to do is ask themselves how they felt as a child being criticized all the time. And I think a lot of parents do that. And I think they do that with the best interests in heart. They are trying to help their child be the best. But criticism just disempowers children and makes them feel like they can't do anything right themselves. So I think it's important for the parent to stop and think about this criticism or this method of instruction So what they need to remember is they might treat their own children in ways that they would never treat the next door neighbor child. They would never criticize that child, and they would never yell at that child, but they would yell at their own child and criticize their own child. And the question I have is, this is the most important person in your life. Why would you do that? No, I think the parent has to change. A child can't change. They're too young, too small, they don't know. They can't do it. So just tell yourself, I'm going to try another way of getting my child to be as effective or as capable as possible. And I'm going to cut the criticism out.
Thank you. Here, this question is actually related to two key words or two concepts you mentioned in your lecture, compassion and empathy. The question is how to motivate the kids to protect themselves while having compassion and empathy. Actually, before you answer this question, may I ask you to explain the differences between compassion and empathy? Because I noticed that most audience today, English is not their native language. And these words in the Chinese translation is almost the same. Can you explain what are the major differences? Then we answer the question, how to motivate the kids to protect themselves while have compassion and empathy.
I think so I guess we'll start with empathy. Mm-hmm. And empathy is understanding another person's needs. And compassion, and I think empathy also goes to, it goes to actually taking action. Whereas it's not the same. Empathy refers more generally to our ability to take the perspective of and feel the emotions of another person. Mm-hmm. And compassion is when those feelings that you have and thoughts that you have move to a desire to help. You actually mm-hmm. take action. Mm. Empathy is more a feeling, and compassion is more action. So if you see a homeless person on the street, mm-hmm. you might feel empathy for that person and give them $1 or whatever, a few dollars. But if you're compassionate, really compassionate, you might do something to help them move out of the cold or find a place to spend the night or something like that. I think that's my personal distinction of the definition between the two.
Okay, so can I interpret like empathy is more about put yourself in the other side, the person's boots, and think as him or her. And in Chinese, we call it 同理心. But compassion is more about 慈悲心. You think more about their sufferings, and you can help them to remove or reduce, at least reduce their sufferings.
Yes, that's right. It's more active. That's a good question. You know, it's a very good question. I can tell this is a very smart audience.
Yeah, because this is a narrow gate you opened.
I know.
Yeah. Then the question is how to motivate the kids to protect themselves while having compassion and empathy.
That's right. Well, how do you, well, you always want to teach your child to have empathy, and that helps them understand another person's position. And when, as I said in the lecture, when you understand another person's position, you're in a better position to negotiate. Because when they feel that you understand them, they're more willing to adapt and negotiate. I think you never want to put yourself in a position where you are at risk and you are going to lose either, you know, your well-being or money or your reputation or something. So, I mean, you have to have limits. There are limits to compassion and to empathy. I mean, actually, I think there's more limits to compassion. Empathy, I mean, we can all feel another person's pain. I can feel the pain of all these people who have COVID and long-term symptoms and people who have lost their relatives. I can empathize with them. But I'm not going to go over there and, you know, do the dishes and clean the house. I'm be happy to donate. You have to draw a limit. You have to teach your child to help as much as they can help without hurting or interfering with their own life.
I think this is also a question related to giving versus losing, or even sacrificing a lot. About losing something.
Right. Well, you know, if I lose money, for example, give away a lot of money, I don't feel so bad because I can make more.
Mm-hmm.
But if I lose something that you can't buy, that, you know, where you're physically injured or where something happens that you can't replace, then I feel that's not a good thing to do. I think it's important to take care of yourself. You don't want to be in a situation where you don't have proper clothing, nutrition, house, whatever you need. But you know, I remember there have been times as a teacher where I would spend a lot of money on my classroom, and it made a big difference to many students. And so I would say, well, that makes me happier and it makes the students happier than me taking a trip somewhere or going out to dinner at all these fancy restaurants. And so I would do that, or I would it's better for me to do that than it is for me to fly first class. Okay. It's not so comfortable, but whatever, I can do it. So I think you make a decision so that you can do as much to help without making it impossible for you to move forward.
Okay, I can tell from the previous question, parents have some concern about the building up kindness, and thank you for your answer. We removed that fear. Then we can think about other questions, how to give them answers and the question and the suggestions. I'm trying to combine some questions like is the kindness coming from personality, and here how to improve kindness in children, how to help kids be kind. How does kindness be transformed into being self-motivated? Sorry, I'm combining some questions.
Right. So one way to help kids be kind is to be kind to them. When they experience it, they know what it feels like. And then what I always did as a mother is I read all these books to my children. I mean, lots of children's books talk about kindness. You know, one animal is kind to another animal, or you know, children get lost and somebody helps them find their way home. And you know, those stories, one thing that everyone needs to know is people don't remember facts, they remember stories. And that's why when I wrote my book, it's full of stories. And that's what I'm hoping to do, is to revise the book also another time, so it'll have stories that'll be more relevant to people in China.
Yes, great.
And
great.
And so right now the stories are very relevant to the Western world, but I'm trying to help people in Chinese education system in China so that they can also benefit in the same way. So stories, tell your children stories, watch movies with them, and then talk about it. So one of the things people do is they watch movies with their kids, but then they don't talk about it. It's like, why don't you talk about it? Talk about it. Stop the movie for a minute and then talk about what happened and see what your child thinks. That's how you teach kindness. That's how you teach empathy and compassion, um, by actually seeing it in action. And I mean, there's a lot of stories. I don't know whether there's stories in China like this, but there are stories about like the bus driver that, or there was recently a story about a policeman who was in a store to arrest two women for shoplifting food.
Mhm.
And then he realized that they were hungry and they had no money.
Mm.
So instead of arresting them, he bought them both all the food they needed and never arrested them. So, I mean, this shows empathy and compassion for these people. And he was just a policeman. You know, he didn't have a lot big salary either. But, you know, when you do something like that, you feel better, you
Mhm.
personally. And of course, the people that got the food, they felt much better. So I think those are stories that help kids feel that way. And also makes them feel happier and more comfortable in the world if they think they're surrounded by people that are empathetic, who will
Mm.
then be kind to them when they make a mistake of some kind. We all make mistakes, you know, all of us. And I make mistakes too all the time. Um, and so maybe, you know, as you get older, you don't make as many mistakes, but you still make mistakes. That's one of the advantages of getting older. You're smarter or a little bit wiser, let's put it that way.
Mm.
But that's what you know, little kids make a lot of mistakes, you know, and that's why in playgrounds, they try to have rubberized matting. So if you fall, it's not going to be terrible.
Mm. Yeah, I think this parent Lawrence just asked a question echoing what you said about the sharing stories. He said, thanks for your great webinar during the pandemic. We really noticed that our son, 13 years old, become less active on many aspects, maybe too much online class he has for a long time. While he really spent more time online by himself, not sharing with us as before. Any good suggestions?
So actually, one of the things you can do is share your ideas of what's happening. So parents don't share a lot. They think they're protecting their child and they just don't say much about anything. It's like, oh, time for dinner, come sit down.
Mm.
And so if you also share some of your feelings, then they will share their feelings. You know, they're a little hesitant. They don't, because a lot of kids feel criticized. And that's like back to the parent that was talking about being critical. You know, I realized that in my classes, if I didn't criticize the kids, if I just said, I'm here to help you, they always they would try everything. They'd be really innovative. And they would always tell me their stories about what they did here and what they did there. So you as the older person, you need to share your feelings and your thoughts. And it can be about anything, you know, anything small or big, or what you did going shopping, or what you watched on the TV, or, you know, anything. But you have to be genuine. You know, all kids have this built-in antenna. They can
Mm-hmm.
tell when you're faking it. So no
Yeah,
faking
that's true.
allowed. You know, you have to be real, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but you know, you just start a little bit, and the more you do, the more that you know, um, you will get in return. You know, we also play this game in my family. It's called one thorn and two roses. Did you ever hear of this?
No.
Okay, so let me tell you what it is. A
Yeah.
thorn is something that hurts you.
Mm.
So something that happened during the day that was a thorn.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rose, it smells good, right?
Mm.
And it looks beautiful. So two good things that happen to you during the day.
Mm.
And it can be anything, and so we have, our 5-year-old is telling us like what happened to her, her thorn, somebody took away her dog or her teddy bear, and, then she had to get it back. And, that was the thorn. And then, so what are the good things that happen? So when you think that way, you start to look about for like all the good things that might have happened during the day. They may just be little things, you got a cookie or something. But you want children to share with you as a parent what they think. And so you can just do it around the table. Anyway, that's what we do around the table. It's just a
Okay.
game.
Again, simple but not easy. Let's practice one by one. As long as you make some progress, please give us some feedback. And we are always there. Many of you guys are in our WeChat groups. Give us some feedback, or I think those will be also great encouragement, not just to us, but also to all other parents. We need to build our kindness together by sharing. Share our own stories, and don't be shy. In my webinars, I always share my mistakes. I always share, okay, Harmony Plus is not perfect. We have problems. Let's do it better together. And when we are doing parenting in front of our kids, we should also show we are not perfect. Let's just improve together, as Esther just suggested. And I love one parent said, adult child or young adult. This is great. For us, we are just the older adult, and they are young adults. If we define this way, I think they will feel more likely we're equal, and we can have some conversations fairly, okay, reasonably, and they would like to listen and open their heart. I think that's very, very important. Here, I also noticed with such questions, I'm trying to combine them again, also about screen time and how to make them disciplined on their time or reduce their screen time. And in case some students or some children, they are not respectful to parents, how can you still be kind? How can you stay kind?
I think it's really bad when children are not respectful to parents. But I think one of the things you have to ask yourself is, where did they learn that disrespect? And so you have to be careful, but you need to put yourself on, on an equal footing, in a sense, where you talk to them about how important it is for them to be respectful of you and for you to be respectful of them. And I think one of the areas where the biggest conflict comes today that I can see is screen time. And parents, kids want to be on computer all the time. They want to play games. And you have to ask, so why are they wanting to play games so much? If you just take a look at the games, number one reason they want to play games is they're social. They're playing games with someone. And what do they miss most in school now? Their friends. So when you take away their game and you take away their time, you're removing their ability to interact. So what you want to do is to talk to them about it and say, well, maybe we should do something else to help with that, as opposed to just being a dictator and taking away their computer or their phone. I just don't agree with that at all. Those kids, by the way, that are the really great gamers, they are learning computer skills that are going to serve them well later on if they want to be coders or if they want to do other things on the internet. I would just challenge any of those parents that are trying to take their kids' games away. You do it and see whether you can beat that game. I bet you can't even do it. They are it's not just, well, some of the games are kind of crazy, but I mean, there are a lot of games out there. Roblox, for example, you know, and Minecraft. Minecraft is Lego in the sky or in the internet. There's a lot of good games, and I'm sure there's a lot of games in China that the kids can play that we don't even know about here. But so help them select games that are in some way educational, and then also see what you can do to satisfy their need to be social. We're all social beings. Human beings are social. And right
we are
now,
social animals. Yes,
we're social animals, and we can't, I mean, I can't even go and see Bill.
I need some.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get that vaccine, and then I'm coming.
Yeah, just 10 minutes we'll meet up from my house to our office, from your house to the office, just 10 minutes.
I know.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But so, you know, I'm thankful for Zoom, and I want to thank Eric for creating Zoom, because without Zoom, we wouldn't have anything, right?
Yeah, I always say so whenever I talk to Eric. Sometimes I text him through WeChat. Yeah, thank you so much. And for any gatherings, especially I see happy faces from students. I always share. Yeah, for example, 2 weeks ago, we had the successful program for the East Side Union School District. Those successful cases I shared with Eric. I think that's great, and I hope parents can also encourage your kids as we share in the daily work. I share with Eric Yuan, and for you, why not? Your kids are your dearest people in your life, so encourage them. And also here, I want to share what Esther helped me a couple of months ago. This is another real case. Yeah, all the cases we share are real, but this is more relevant to myself because that's my own son. Yeah, who has been suffering from online games as well. And his school had an e-sport club, and he has been very active. I should say he had been very active. Just change the tense, okay? And he suffered some heart problems. It's terrible. I just read his report, and his heartbeat was up to 200 as highest, lowest 41. And the normal heartbeat was 105 to 140. That's crazy. And also they have AV blocks. That's more scary. And what is the main reason? Unfortunately, online games, because that made kids very excited all day long. And imagine most of those kids, typical, I think even the parent asked just now, the 13-year-old boy, the same thing. Imagine from 7 o'clock in the morning, they started to watch online games, other people playing. From 8 to 3, they were in online classrooms. Then immediately they go to online games until dinner time. After dinner, they quickly finish up their homework. And I know most students, their grades are dropped dramatically from A's to C's. That's terrible. Why? Because they spend much less time in their assignment, but more on online games. The other day, I got another advice from Brain Power of Harmony Plus. Professor Linda suggested, and I think it's working with my son. If you want to play online game, yes, you can go for it, but create your own online game. Actually, that's a good idea. And I see, you know what happened, Esther?
What?
He signed up some programs, online courses on Coursera.
Oh, good.
Yeah, for example, a UPenn professor teaching gamification and also other coding programs. I think that's wonderful. Why not? He's happy and actually working together with his friends now.
It's great. It is really great. I'm so happy to hear that, because that's what I did with one of my grandchildren that was addicted. we said, you want to have a really great gaming computer?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can build it. We'll go in.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
And you can't believe what he learned in doing that. And then also now he's doing the same thing as your son.
Mm-hmm.
He is taking courses in how to do it's game theory and game design. And
Yeah, both programs. Yes, you can programs. Yes.
He's 12 years old.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. I think we are happily sharing such cases, such stories, not standard answers, but something you can try. And another advice I took from our Dean Esther was I took my kids, not just my son, also my daughter. Our entire family now set up a new rule. Every Sunday morning, we go out for hiking. You know, we have a yes, we have a small goal that I downloaded one app. I suggest to all of you as well. It's called alltrails.com. Go to alltrails.com, download, and take your kids outside to the community, to the nature, and also they can hang out with their friends. And my daughter's soccer team, they have their players making appointment together to go to Rancho San Antonio. Why not? And my son go out for biking with his friend, of course, following social distancing. This will be very, very important. And when they meet their friends, when they relaxed, they keep the social part, but through other solutions, not online games, they are happier. And I'm happily sharing with everybody. My son's heartbeat already dropped, and almost every morning, I monitor, I count his pulse. Now, if he doesn't play games, for 3 days, actually I can get 71 as his heart rate. But if he played in the previous night, it will be 90 or 100. If he played 3 days in a row, it will be 120 in the early morning. You can imagine. So this will be the impact. You give them solutions. Sometimes it's too tough. We were all kids many years ago. So our parents also blamed us for some other crazy things. So we need empathy to think about our kids and give them some options. If unfortunately your parents were also tiger parents, helicopter parents, we should not do the same. So do something different, trying to give them some other options because they need help. And again, I'm sharing, that's what my son told me. Daddy, what should I do if I don't play online game? What can I do? So yeah, and actually he cried. He cried like my tears fell down just now. It's same thing because this is about our kids and we should share the love to our kids. But anyway, so I think this made the atmosphere too stressful. Let's move to an easier question and a happier question for Ashley to answer. This is the question for you. I cannot answer. It's about how did your daughters learn math, physics, and writing? How did you supplement their studies?
Oh, that's a great question. So writing, I can start with. So they did what the school suggested they do, but then I supplemented with other things. So whenever we went on a trip, they had a journal and they had to write in their journal about what they did every day. And so it turns out research shows that kids don't have to have the writing corrected. They just need to do it. And so I didn't correct it. And so they grew up learning how to write easily, and they really loved keeping a journal. They also got a reward for that journal entry, whatever it was, a cookie or something. So that was how we did writing. And they ended up being really good writers. And then with physics, my husband's professor of physics. And so it turns out that if you're a very esteemed intellectual professor of physics, it's hard for you to understand what people that don't understand physics need to know. So he was a great teacher for very smart people that were adults, but he had a little bit of trouble with kids because he just couldn't remember what they didn't know. So what I did with that is that I, again, hired Stanford students who were usually 18 or 19 years old, who would come in and help teach. And they did that in physics and in math also. So I'm not sure I would have had to, if I had Khan Academy back then, if I would have needed to hire somebody, because I think they could have learned it themselves using Khan Academy, or using some of the other online programs for math and physics. But there was no Khan Academy and there was no other way to do it. And so that's what I did. And also I felt really good about it because these students were usually kids that needed extra money. And so I was also helping my daughters learn math and physics and also supplying them with additional money, which they needed. So that's what I did. And all the way through school, they always wrote journals and they became excellent writers. It worked out really well. So you don't have to correct it. As a matter of fact, they might say to you, don't read it. I said, fine, I won't read it, just write it.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked. And I also did that in school with my students. They wrote every day for 15 minutes in class, just 15 minutes. And the quality of the writing just went up dramatically.
Okay.
So
like that's like a soccer players, they juggle every day or dribbling every day. Yeah.
And then they learn. Yeah. It's just practice.
Mm.
And so the same thing could go for all students. And then I also did it in an elementary school. I taught kids grades 4, 5, and 6. And I had them writing stories about whatever they wanted to write about. And I put them in pairs, 2 of them together. Boy, they loved it. And kids like stories, you know that? They love to hear stories. And then when you ask them to write stories, they like to write it too, the only thing they don't like is being corrected, you know? So if you don't correct it, then there's no problem. And so, like I said, educational research shows that it doesn't matter if you correct it or not, that they somehow learn it anyway. They figure it out. Or
yeah,
you
but
have
if
them,
they want to improve, they still need some coaching.
That's right.
I saw our kids, even my daughter, benefited a lot from our playwriting. It's about stories as well. And
Yes.
they are so creative. I see kids are so creative. Just
So one thing that's great about playwriting is that there's a lot of peer-to-peer interaction in that.
Yes, a lot.
And so that makes it really fun for them. And then also when they have peer-to-peer editing, oh my God, you can't imagine. They might make a lot of mistakes themselves, but somehow they can pick it out on their friend's paper. And so they're really good at editing each other's stuff. So of course the teacher needs to look it over too, which I always did. But it's amazing the other student would catch at least 50% of the mistakes. And then of course I went in on the other 50%. But if you have the attitude of it's fine, no problem, we all make mistakes, then they don't mind. You know, kids don't care. They just don't want to be wrong. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Here I just got a reminder from Joanna. We actually have questions from Facebook. Yeah, we have the live broadcaster from on Facebook as well. Any advice for young toddlers? And here another parent also asked, my son is 5 years old. Yeah, also young. Yeah, he thinks many things are boring, like homework or reading, study, too boring. What should we do?
Well, if they're a toddler, I can tell you most toddlers, again, like stories. Tell them a story. Or, you know, if they don't want to listen to you read, there's all these audio tapes. Well, they're not tapes anymore. They're just online storytelling that kids can watch and listen to. That is one thing that you can do to encourage everything, online learning. That I think that works really well. So the other thing I do with toddlers, and I just recommend, is give them some kind of responsibility. Most people don't do anything. They just serve them. Like have them help make breakfast, or have them help set the table, or, put them in a position of responsibility. They get so happy with this. So, one of my toddler grandchildren is in charge, don't be so shocked here, but is in charge of vacuuming, because we bought her a small vacuum that's electric, and she loves going around the house vacuuming. She thinks it's fun, and we love it because, of course, the house is very clean now. But if you can think of some responsibility that they can do to help you, it will make them feel a lot better. So that's what I would do with toddlers. And then in terms of, I would let them also draw pictures. They can't write stories yet, they're too little. But they can draw pictures, and then you can hang them on the wall. And you can just show them how much you appreciate what they're doing, their energy, their effort.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. And I think parents learned a lot today, and it's a great chance to sit together, brainstorming, rethink about parenting, about our kids. Let me read this question. This is a tough question, actually.
Oh.
Okay, this parent didn't show his name or her name. I read some articles that Steve Jobs was not always kind to his employees, and he gave a lot of pressure to the human interaction team. Do you think if a leader is too kind, will the team performance will be compromised? Okay, some grammar mistake. Okay, yeah, please.
Okay. So I personally knew Steve Jobs, and he was not easy to work with. He was not a good leader. And that's why he was thrown out of Apple the first time. But he realized, I think a lot of it is documented in his book. He realized when they threw him out that when you're a good leader, what you do is empower other people to be the most effective leaders they can be. So he made a lot of changes. He spent a lot of time in my classroom because he was in between companies then. I don't know, he was just hanging out doing nothing besides looking around. And he was always very kind to me. I think he always liked teachers. But I know that he was very demanding as a leader. If people didn't do something right or didn't do it on time, he got really angry. I don't think that worked against him, except in some cases. I mean, I remember when the Macintosh came out, that he was extremely difficult to work with and very demanding. And somehow that worked in favor of the product. But most of the time when leaders behave like that, it works against them. So that's another thing that I'm thinking about doing is leadership training for organizations, because I think there's a lot of the same problems that exist in schools exist in organizations. And the question you want to ask is, what kind of behavior is going to get the most effective and productive work from an employee? And do you think yelling at them and criticizing them and being nasty works better than being, understanding? And I think it's important. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It's important to have high standards, set a goal, have a vision, and make sure that people are able to meet those standards. And I would never humiliate anybody, never, before a group. I never did that to my students, never did that to my student leaders. If they did something wrong, I always did it in private. I think that corporate leaders also need to do the same thing. You know, humiliation doesn't work in your favor.
Okay, I have an excuse for Steve Jobs. Maybe he's a good leader, but not a good manager. Leaders have followers. He has a lot of followers.
That's right. He was a good leader because he had a vision.
Yeah.
And his vision, you know, his vision was crazy back when we all were thinking about it. You know, really, it's unbelievable, you know, what happened with the Macintosh and what happened with the phone. But so he was a great leader, great visionary, but he was not a good manager.
Yeah.
He got too mad all the time. You know?
Sometimes that's also the excuse for myself. I can be a good leader. Sometimes I manage things badly. Yeah. Anyway, we have a great team, so nobody can just work out everything. How time flies. We actually already have overdue half an hour. Last question. Do you have any suggestions in learning high school biology? I know you don't teach biology, but you at least have 2 daughters are really good at this subject.
Yes, I do have 2 daughters that are good at the subject, and I really love biology myself. There are a lot of courses online that you can take or your child can take online, biology courses. And the key to doing a good job with the course is they have to do it with a friend. As long as there's interaction, they're going to learn it. As long as they're doing it alone by themselves, it's almost a waste of time. And so the most effective thing would be as if there could be 2 or 3 kids together that watch a lecture together, and then they stop it every, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes, and then talk to each other about what the professor said, and then continue again. And I can tell you that there is data at Stanford University from a man that I've been working with now. His name's James Gibbons. He was the dean of engineering. And this method that I just described works as effectively, if not more effectively, than students that are in a regular lecture hall, sitting, taking notes, and then following up with the test. So that is a better way to do it, especially now in the pandemic. And they can watch it together on their computer, and then they can be on their phone and talk to each other about it, and then they can write it up. So biology is fascinating because it involves your own body. And, you know, my daughter with 23andMe, she developed a curriculum for learning about DNA, you know, and so maybe I don't know if she has it online. You could go to 23andMe and see if they've got a biology curriculum. I was helping her start that. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. So that's what happened. It might still be there, or it might have, yeah. But whatever they want to learn, engineering, I'm doing engineering. I'm working with UC Berkeley School of Engineering, and with exactly that methodology I just explained. And we're doing it using online courses.
Yeah, okay. Parents who care a lot about the programs or your children's academic performances, you can always keep one eye on us, on Harmony Plus. You can follow Harmony Plus on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Just search Harmony Plus, you can find us. A lot of open resources free of charge you can get. And also back into biology itself, many years ago, when I was in the Chinese National Entrance Examination, I got a 69 out of 70, not too high. Okay.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, because when I say 69, people say that's too low, but it's out of the full score is 70. Yeah, that's an interesting project. And we at Harmony Plus, we have very strict standard to select the teachers, great teachers. If you read our deans sharing New Year's letter on LinkedIn or other social media, you can find our admission rate for staff and teachers was 3.38%, which is much lower than Stanford, Harvard's admission rate. We don't say we just be so picky. It is actually, we have our unique standard. We select the teachers who really love students. Love is one of our core values, and the teachers that can regard students as their own kids. That's very important. For information, yesterday I had a 2-hour interview with Steve, a great teacher in Wyoming. I think that's a great candidate as well. We're very selective and also such great teachers. They know how to empower students, empower them. All our solutions are trying to be as student-centered as possible. So follow us and stay with us at least for Saturday webinars. We will be here next week again. I will share together with Professor Han about online learning. Yeah, thank you again for your participation. Nothing is a standard answer, but we can think and upgrade education together. So let's do it. Make your kids growing better, and let's, in the end, make the world a better place. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Yes, thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.